Hey everybody, hope you've had a great week and welcome to Low Friction Friday. Alright, so today you've got a main theme of how to make the fastest race chains. So I'll show you what we do here at Zero Friction Cycling, and then from there we'll be able to, help guide you as to what you would do in your own home setting if you wish to prep your own race chains at home. And providing I have time, then we'll also run through some, easier options if you're not going to go the whole 9 yards on, just trying to extract every possible fraction of a watt from your chain. So like many things, there's a number of levels as to what you might want to tackle, from ultimate down to something a bit easier and more practical. So you'll try to run through all that. First, let's just dive into a little bit of low friction news. Apologies, I've continued to have some weird, probably self-induced tech issues with my YouTube recording and putting the videos together. Part of the issue has been that my computer does seem to be lacking sufficient memory, so I have to close a lot of the tabs that I normally have open down, as well as Excel and Word, because it's just running out of RAM, and then everything is running really janky and not often doing things when I ask it to do things, or just completely crashing and it has to recover. And that's quite disruptive too when you've got sort of clips going everywhere on your filming. I have ordered more RAM, so I'm going to be going from 16 to 64 fairly soon after that arrives. And so, yeah, that's something that I'll fix up ready for next year, and I'm hoping that will lessen the error rate. In the interim, I've just whipped up a little ZFC YouTube channel bingo card for you. So if I manage to get all of these occurring in one video, and you're the first to send it through and let me know, you'll win a prize. Alrighty, on to actual low friction news. So I am pleased to report we finally have a reply from Sram with regards to the 0.8% recommended wear mark for their chain tool, which does buck the trend for what has become really the default industry standard of 0.5%. And there's just, very good reason as to why it's 0.5% to protect your cassette and chain rings from wear. So we'll run through what my email to SRAM was and their reply. So why is SRAM's recommended replacement mark 0.8% versus the generally accepted default 0.5%? There are severe concerns that replacing at 0.8% will ensure that a new cassette and likely new chain rings will need to be purchased to run the next new chain. Considering that sometimes the extremely high cost of these components, this is currently viewed as a troubling chain wear recommendation mark. Comments from some viewers when I have touched on this topic are along the lines of, this is because SRAM wants their customers to have to spend to replace everything with every new chain. This is not a good perception. It is difficult to understand why SRAM is going with a very high wear replacement mark, which will greatly exacerbate wear damage to cassette and chainring teeth, thus greatly increasing likelihood they will need replacing. I would very much like to obtain further information on this. This was part one of an original two-part question submission. The second part regarding replacing chains early causing premature wear was the other, which is great to see that has been removed. Thank you. However, this part one, myself and at least 3 industry leads are waiting on me to obtain SRAM's official guidance on this. SRAM's answer. So SRAM's 0.8% chain wear limit applies specifically to when the chain's performance may degrade and should be replaced. Through years of field and lab testing, we have learned that the wear of the drivetrain components relative to the wear of the chain can vary widely. Due to this, chain wear alone is not a consistent indicator to define replacement intervals for maximizing drivetrain performance. Please note that we are constantly investigating designs, tools, and inspection methods to help inform the rider's preventive maintenance. Alrighty, there we go. And would you believe I've sent some follow-up questions to that? So it is great, and I do thank you to the SRAM contact who took the time to reply, because I've been sort of chasing that or to get more information on this 0.8% for a while. And not to burn that, the goodwill of that contact already, but yeah, just for the audience to know what I'm following up. I have some concern as to how much that helps us at this moment, because what I take from that is that they've done a bunch of testing and that they found that really the chain's performance does not degrade up until around that 0.8% mark. And so that is, I guess, an aspect. However, it doesn't address the fact that from, say, 0.5% onwards, it is quite likely going to be now eating through the teeth on your cassette cogs and chain rings to suit the ever-growing length of the chain, because the amount of tolerance that's there for the rollers to slot neatly into the teeth is pretty much used up by that 0.5% elongation wear mark. And beyond that point, the rollers will start to slide down the tooth faces, and they just simply eat those teeth out to suit the ever-growing length of your chain past that point. Sort of, I guess, continually eating through your teeth on your cogs and chain rings is not going to be the highest performance running from, I guess, one aspect, and we still have the parts replacement cost concern. But also, I mean, yes, they're right, things are highly variable, but so is everybody's chain maintenance. A lot of cyclists out there will just pretty much continue to add more lubricant and wipe chain. So what's going on inside their chain from just a lubrication friction perspective in the latter half of a chain's life versus the first half is quite starkly different. Obviously, when things are fresh and new and the lubricant is more like it's actually a lubricant, things should be going okay. But as contamination builds up in that lubricant over thousands and thousands of kilometers, and you're just adding more and more stuff in there and not cleaning any of the crap that you've been gathering out, then the performance of your chain in that second half, unless you are doing proper solvent flush resets, it's hard to make a case that for a lot of cyclists there wouldn't be some degradation in the performance of that chain, especially from 0.5% to 0.8%, just in a lot of real-world use. So, I've sent a bunch of follow-up to that, basically covering those concerns. And we'll see if we can get some sort of further depth around this 0.8% mark, because, I do find it a bit troubling. The fact is 0.5% has become that sort of industry default for a very good reason. And that whilst, yes, it is not guaranteed that even if you replace a chain at 0.5%, that you will get the next chain on without needing to potentially replace your cassette. The fact remains that if you run it all the way to 0.8, you are practically guaranteeing that you will need to do so. And a lot of the cassettes can be, like a SRAM Axis Red cassette is generally around $700. Even Force level is hundreds of dollars. Avoiding replacing that when you replace your chains is just a great idea. And, worst case with some of the SRAM systems, if you have the SRAM Red integrated power meter chain rings, they're at about sort of $2,000. So that can be some pretty big ouch if you need to replace your chain rings and your cassette along with your chain because you ran the chain too long, as opposed to erring on replacing it earlier. Hopefully most cases won't be anywhere near that worst case scenario, but I mean, it happens. And even lower levels or lower tiers, it's still ouch. And if that ouch can be avoided, it gives you more money to spend on much more fun things in cycling than just replacing components that you could have avoided needing to replace. So we're still going to sort of hammer pretty hard on this 0.8%, because sort of just saying that in testing that the raw performance of the chain doesn't degrade till beyond that point, I don't think solves the actual concern that we're really worried about. And so one final note on that, that's also to me a really genuine concern. So with in real world practice with a recommended 0.5% wear mark tool, people don't always catch it by then, but they are more likely to catch it by that 0.5% mark. And if by the time they've remembered to sort of recheck again, it's gone a bit past that, at least the mark that they're aiming for is 0.5. And if they do miss it, hopefully they're still going to be okay. If you're using a 0.8, and that's pretty much already going to have things unlikely that the next chain is going to be okay. If you miss that mark, you're really just, the nails are fully in the coffin now. By the time you check, it's now at 1%. I mean, everything's cactus, and things will have been running crap for quite some time past that mark. So it's hard to endorse that their position on this is a correct one. All right, let's go. How to make the fastest race chain. So now you won't be able to at home do all of what I guess to the same extent we can do here, because this is one of the things we do, and we do a lot of them. However, a number of the processes you'll be able to just adapt to equipment you will have at home, and then providing I have time, if not this week, I'll go through options on perhaps as a sort of follow-up on next week's video. But if I do have time, we'll try to run through the other easier levels to still give yourself a great dedicated race chain. Just remember that either the race chains that you purchase commercially, and there's a number of companies that are making or selling fully optimized race chains. I think sometimes it's perceived that you just spend hundreds of dollars on a fully optimized race chain, you race on it, and then it's now your training chain. In most cases, that should not be the path. So that extra spend, and really all that money is going to cover all the extra time and steps and processes that are involved to try to take a chain from being hopefully just normally fast to as fast as possible. That should be a chain that you have quite a long relationship with for your racing. So normally you can then pretty easily retreat that chain with a number of options, which again, depending on time today, we'll run through, and then have that cranking as your super fast race chain again for your next set of races or big event, and then repeat and repeat and repeat. And a lot of times the chain can continue to actually keep getting faster, especially if you're able to reset it well and then just retreat it well. So a good way to go for avid racers who are going down the path of having a dedicated race chain is obviously you're training on your training chain, you're racing on your race chain, doing all the good things to keep your race chain mint. And then when it's sort of your training chain is nearing its recommended replacement mark, your race chain moves over to be your next training chain, and you start again with a dedicated race chain to be rocking all the races. So for a lot of, I know for a lot of my customers, and I'm sure for a lot of others that are selling race chains, for many of them, it is a chain that sees out potentially a year, potentially 2 years of great fun race time before it might move over, depending on obviously training volume and racing volume. So that, I guess, extra spend to get a really fast chain, or if you're making one at home, that extra time and labor investment to make the fastest chain, it's an investment that you should be able to enjoy for quite a bit of fun cycling. All right, let's go. How to make the fastest race chain. So now you won't be able to at home do all of what I guess to the same extent we can do here, because this is one of the things we do, and we do a lot of them. However, a number of the processes you'll be able to just adapt to equipment you will have at home, and then providing I have time, if not this week, I'll go through options on perhaps as a sort of follow-up on next week's video. But if I do have time, we'll try to run through the other easier levels to still give yourself a great dedicated race chain. Just remember that either the race chains that you purchase commercially, and there's a number of companies that are making or selling fully optimized race chains. I think sometimes it's perceived that you just spend hundreds of dollars on a fully optimized race chain, you race on it, and then it's now your training chain. In most cases, that should not be the path. So that extra spend, and really all that money is going to cover all the extra time and steps and processes that are involved to try to take a chain from being hopefully just normally fast to as fast as possible. That should be a chain that you have quite a long relationship with for your racing. So normally you can then pretty easily retreat that chain with a number of options, which again, depending on time today, we'll run through, and then have that cranking as your super fast race chain again for your next set of races or big event, and then repeat and repeat and repeat. And a lot of times the chain can continue to actually keep getting faster, especially if you're able to reset it well and then just retreat it well. So a good way to go for avid racers who are going down the path of having a dedicated race chain is obviously you're training on your training chain, you're racing on your race chain, doing all the good things to keep your race chain mint. And then when it's sort of your training chain is nearing its recommended replacement mark, your race chain moves over to be your next training chain, and you start again with a dedicated race chain to be rocking all the races. So for a lot of, I know for a lot of my customers, and I'm sure for a lot of others that are selling race chains, for many of them, it is a chain that sees out potentially a year, potentially 2 years of great fun race time before it might move over, depending on obviously training volume and racing volume. So that, I guess, extra spend to get a really fast chain, or if you're making one at home, that extra time and labor investment to make the fastest chain, it's an investment that you should be able to enjoy for quite a bit of fun cycling. Alrighty, so as discussed, we are going to do or set up just step one, the initial break-in. So this is the short break-in before we move to the ultrasonic cleaning, and then get ready for step two. Now, you most likely will not have a dedicated machine for breaking in race chains. Obviously we do quite a few. It's been a very busy period leading up to the Tour of Bright, and there's actually been quite a run for track chains lately as well. So we've been doing a whole bunch of track chains. The YBN SLA 410 is the fastest known track chain. So I have a custom 72 tooth chain ring, so that's the perfect size. I can just swap chain rings over and get the track chains on to break in. And you hoot, let's just pop this on to our dedicated little race chain machine. So it is obviously the same machine for doing the break-ins as well as post the waxing, where we do the wax break-in run before race powdering. However, obviously it is cleaned thoroughly prior to popping the wax chains on. Right, my handy quick links. Now, so not having a dedicated race chain machine to break your chains in, doing this at home, you will want to, if at all possible, do this on an ergo. The aim of the game is, clean. You're not wanting contamination going into your race chain as you're breaking it in. So do basically around, if you're doing the, the ultimate break-in, which is the two-step process. So your first break-in is going to be quite short, just around 15 minutes on your ergo. You don't stress about the wattage too much. Really, if you can average anywhere around sort of 150 to 200-ish, anywhere in there is going to be great. So this little machine, I do my break-ins on this machine at 175. I can't just hit start and have it go from 0 to 100 cadence at 175 watts resistance without causing all sorts of fun for the couplings. So I just use the Garmin controlling the Neo. I have it on a -8% gradient to start with. Once that's up to speed, I can get the machine started. Then I can change that now to my target power of 175 watts and set myself a timer for 15 minutes. And cool, we'll come back and move to step two after that has broken in. Okay, so the first 15-minute break-in has been completed, so we're going to put that into now the just round of ultrasonic cleaning. At home, if you have a normal size ultrasonic, so generally for chains I recommend the sort of 2 litre size, which ultrasonic sizes are weird. A 2 litre ultrasonic will pretty much mean you can get 1 litre of fluid volume in there. I have no idea why you will not get 2 litres into a 2 litre ultrasonic. The sizing may be external as opposed to internal volume, which is just bizarre. Anywho, The one that I use for race chains is this rather fancy $1,500 unit. It's much more powerful. It's 4 litre, which means I can get 2.8 litres of fluid volume in there, but 2.8 litre powerful ultrasonic means that I can get done in basically one round what would normally take multiple rounds. So if you're doing it at home in a lower power, lower volume ultrasonic, you're probably going to be doing a couple of rounds. You don't need to go too nuts. This is just the first round after that initial short break-in. For most, you're probably, I'd say 2 at best, maybe 3. This big one I can usually get by with 1, sometimes 2, depends on the chain and the brand. I have already degassed this, so I'm just using solvent, so mineral turpentine. It can be recommended, so you may notice I have I guess a fairly good exhaust system here. It may be better if you're doing it at home. If you're using solvent, obviously do it outside. Something like either UFO Clean or Silka Stripper do actually cavitate better than solvent. They will be much more powerful than solvent if you're using a lower power ultrasonic. So even these here are like $500 units, and not many people have those. So the power of your ultrasonic that you're using at home might be a bit lower. You might want to use something that is going to have a much stronger ultrasonic or cavitation power than what Mineral Terps does, which is quite low. Again, I can kind of, I can get a fantastic job done with just the cheaper mineral turpentine, which I can recycle through my distillers because I've got a pretty fancy unit going on. Anyway, we'll pop that in. We will set that to run for 15 minutes. Oh, it needs to be reset after. And then we'll come back for the next bit. Okay, so the ultrasonic round has been done. We'll have a look inside the ultrasonic in a sec to see what came out. So there's going to be a bit more fan noise because I've got the industrial air purifier running high, which I always do when I have the cleaning going. Anyway, very quick next step really. So we're taking that one out. We are going to, because the next stage is going to involve break-in part 2, so we're going to be putting a high quality oil or wet lube onto the chain and giving it the long break-in. So I want clean, clear chain metal, so I am going to quickly dry this before giving it an alcohol ultrasonic bath. You can just, at home, blast it with a hairdryer or a heat gun, wear a chemical mask or do it outside, or just let it dry in the sun if you've got the time. I have an air fryer, which makes things handy. Oops, we have some chains and preps going on there. Get those going. So the air fryer makes things easy for me because I can just set that going and then go do other stuff. And the air fryer exhaust has a pipe which goes straight out the exhaust fan there, so I don't have any drying fumes going to the workshop, they just go straight out. All right, let me try to set up that we can have a look inside what came out of the chain. Oh, but before that, sorry, almost forgot. If you're using the either the recommended UFO Drivetrain Clean or Silka Stripper, then you don't need to do an alcohol bath at all, and you also don't have to worry about chemical fumes. Boil up the kettle, get it can be a barbecue tray. This is a $5 cake tin tray. Once the kettle's boiled, which you can obviously do that while it's doing the ultrasonic cleaning, pop the chain onto your swisher, pop it in there, pour in the boiling water, swish it around, basically repeat that until you've used your kettle full of boiling water, then dry the chain. That is going to be your basically perfect rinse after you have done the cleaning rounds with DT Clean or Silka Stripper. So there's no sort of faffing with the chemical side. It is just boiling water for those options. I can't remember if I mentioned on that last clip, you will still want to dry the chain post the boiling water rinse. So still get out the heat gun or hairdryer. All right, let's pour this out into my drums, which I then use for recycling. All right, getting close to the end. This one's come out not too bad. I don't know if we're going to be able to see in there too well. Let me see what I can get out. Some chains, it really does vary quite a bit. So some chains we do actually get quite a lot of metal particles after we've done the ultrasonic clean. It's not really coming up. There's only a very small amount of metal out of that one. So the YBNs are normally pretty good. But believe it or not, things can vary a little bit chain by chain, where there's just sort of batching issues and so on. And yeah, sometimes you clean a chain and there's quite a bit of metal after the initial break-in. That one not too bad though, so pretty good. Here is one that I remembered to take a photo of because I knew it might come in handy for this vid. So yeah, a bit more of a clearer indication of what can easily come out from just one chain after a short break-in. So you can't really see the metal glinting in there, but yeah, there's a decent bit of metal particles can come out sometimes. Sorry, I also forgot to mention at that point that after drying, then goes in for a methylated spirits bath, just to remove any film that may have been left behind from the factory grease and mineral terps. So we do want clean, clear chain metal. That is a step that you also won't need to do if you are using Ceramic Speed Drivetrain Clean or Silka Stripper. Post your boiling water, rinse and drying, you are good to go for the next step. So yeah, using the more traditional solvent method does add a bit more time and another step in there, but we're pretty used to that sort of whole process. And it for ZSC purposes, even though I need to do pretty long runs because I'm using those solvents, it just keeps the price down because I can recycle those products back. On to part two of the break-in. So you just want to use, so when you're putting this back on your ergo, make sure your ergo is clean. So not so much of an issue when you're popping your factory grease chain on. It's factory grease and your chain's going to have a little bit of crap in it anyway, and it's only a really short break-in. You don't want to put it on if your drivetrain's a disaster, but you don't have to fret about it. You will want it pretty clean for your second stage break-in, just because we do want to really keep contamination out now. This second break-in, which is the longer break-in, that's really all about basically just getting parts mated. We want these parts to be just nicely bedded in. These are very minor things, so we're doing a lot of work to try to extract every little bit of speed out of the chain. And it's something where, I guess where this has really shown up in testing is that when the top places have put race chains out that have been prepped in a similar process to this, potentially not as thorough, I would generally hazard, then they send them out for some, for a race or two. They get the chains back, they ultrasonically clean them, they re-prep them and retest them, and they are faster than after the first optimization, and then they are faster again after repeating that a second time or potentially a third time. For a period, the race chains, unless they've been absolutely hammered, like if they go into a full mutter, that doesn't go well. But for a lot of racing, once the chains, as they just keep basically bedding into a perfect spot, they can just keep getting faster. So trying to make the absolute fastest race chains out of the box, that's part of why we have the longer two-stage break-in. There's a potential risk with if you were just doing a really long break-in with the factory grease, and the factory grease has the metal particles in it, that those metal particles may be in a relatively static-ish type spot and just kind of carving a bit of a groove. I guess this could be worsening the asperities and imperfections in the metal surface as opposed to making them better. So that's why that first break-in is quite short. It is just making sure we're getting all the factory grease out of anywhere it might be in the tiny nooks and crannies and fissures in the chain and into the factory grease. Ultrasonic cleaning really helps get that out. If you don't have an ultrasonic, container cleaning is just fine. Just do it very thoroughly, so quite agitated container baths. So, but yeah, then the stage 2, that's why we do a 2-stage, is to post that first one, then move to a high quality oil. I use Revolubes. I don't think, like, I would not stress if you wanted to just use, you know, really, you could just use your Singer 3-in-1 oil from the supermarket. I can't see that that would be any issue. There's my master link. So just really, you just want a mineral oil. Again, you don't want a product that has been proven to be a bit of a disaster. So Revolubes is very light. I really like that for this duty because it's really clean, it's really light, it doesn't have any penetration issues, so it's going to get in there, applying a drop per roller just fine. Oops. It's easy to clean the machine after because it's a very clean lube, and it's easy to clean the chain after. So it's just, yeah, an all-round very high quality oil. Nothing necessarily against using something also very fancy like, say, Rex Black Diamond and Synergetic. The only potential outside concern I have for that is that, so especially in, say, Synergetic's case, that's still the only drip lubricant tested that has a 0.0% wear rate by the end of the 1,000 kilometre test block 1. So if there is a potential that it, I guess, may be so protective that we're not going to quite get the surface mating that we're after, we're trying to find, I guess, the ground in between absolute protection to still extremely, you know, we don't want to be wearing through 30% of the chain quite quickly either, like some of the worst wet lubricants that we have tested. So just whatever you have access to, I would say if it is around 10% or lower for block 1 in the zero friction cycling testing, that is going to serve perfectly fine as just a quality drip lube to pop on for the stage 2 longer break-in. And yeah, as long as you have something that's not a disaster on there, then don't stress. It's, you know, everything is going to be fine. As your dedicated race chain should also obviously be a long-term chain you plan to keep, because after you've used it in your races, you're going to look after it, give it the royal treatment to reset it, retreat it, and get back out there for some more racing. If you're purchasing a dedicated race chain, it's quite expensive, so it doesn't make a lot of sense to use it for a race and then just sort of kick it to the curb a little bit. You know, perfectly clean it again, or as close to what you can do at home, retreat, and get it ready for your next racing. So don't stress, you know, whether or not at the end of what you do in your initial prep, if the chain is a fraction of a watt slower than the absolute optimal peak it may hit after the next retreatment and so on, like you're still making basically as fast a chain as you can make out of the box for your race. Depending on what your rides and races are, possibly there's a small fraction of a watt or so more to be gained over the next couple of treatments. If it's been a really harsh conditions race, potentially it's already going to start stepping back slightly from the first you know, full race treatment. Anyway, so the same as before, so we have lubricated our chain. Just work that in a little bit. I'm going to set this onto grade again so that we can start the machine. All right. Set this now to target power. And for a YBN, I do have vague guides on my ultrasonic and race chain prep guide at the moment. I'm going to expand those out and be more precise. For YBN 11 speed, I'm going to set that running for 1 hour for the second part of the break-in. Most chain models, it's still not too long. Some chains though that are really hard wearing and seemingly pretty tight, just from the way they test in ceramic speed testing, that they're not the fastest chains. They do get a much longer second break-in because we have to do a bit more work to really get them, I guess, a little bit loosened up. All right, so excuse, there might be a bit of background noise as things are running. running out of film time and potentially video length time as well. So post that break-in, so that chain is still going as I'm talking now, but post the second break-in, it's going to go back to obviously ultrasonic cleaning rounds. So it is a bit chain dependent, so we can sort of see after a couple of rounds. So it's normally going to be a minimum of 2. We do want an absolute perfect clean post the second break-in. So even in my bigger, fancier ultrasonic, it's likely to be at least 2 rounds. In the smaller ultrasonics, if you're doing this at home, then it could potentially be 3 or 4 if you're using solvent. Again, if you're using something like the recommended dry train clean or Silka stripper, you are really going to be fine with just 1. They do cavitate extremely well, much more powerful than solvents like mineral turpentine, and they absorb a lot of oil and grease very easily. So putting a decent volume in to your ultrasonic of such a powerful solvent, then you're going to be fine with 1. Boiling water, rinse, and dry. And then you're ready for waxing. Now, back in the day, we did used to faff around with ultrasonic wax application. That is a right pain in the butt, and no one has ever been able to find any improvement for applying the wax ultrasonically. At the end of the day, the chain is far from waterproof. As long as the friction modifiers in the wax are evenly distributed through the wax, which you can do by swishing, stirring the wax very thoroughly before you do it. So just at home, that is all you need to do. I actually blitz the wax before I put the chain in, and then it's a thorough swishing. I covered in the ultrasonic guide. For a lot of ultrasonics at home, a lot of them are quite low power. Wax is not the right viscosity for an I guess the ultrasonics that we have. They were normally meant for something with more water-like viscosity. Ultrasonic power in wax is extremely low. And so there's a higher risk for most doing at home that if you're ultrasonic waxing, even more so if you're putting it into a container surrounded by water in your ultrasonic, the cavitation power in that is going to be practically unmeasurable. And then you give it a run. Over the length of that run, it's quite possible that the friction modifiers in the wax are actually going to start to settle to the bottom of the wax. So you're going to have quite uneven distribution of friction modifiers through your wax, and you'll have a whole lot of faff for quite likely a worse waxing application than if you just swished it well in your wax pot. So that is what we have gone back to. We use fresh wax, so I obviously have because I do a lot of this, I have access to bulk molten speed wax. Have varied what wax I use a little bit, so it was originally molten speed wax version 1, then I switched to hot melt because that was pretty fancy. Then molten speed wax version 2 came out, and I can't divulge testing results that aren't mine, but let's just say I would not stress at all if you are trying to choose between Rex or molten speed wax or hot melt. Any of those are going to be awesome, and you're going to get a brilliant race chain treatment result. I'm using molten speed wax at this time, and yeah, version 2 is an awesome wax. But just go with any of those. So anyway, we're going to we'll thoroughly swish the chain. I've already done a bit, but just for educational purposes, in case you had not seen immersive waxing before, so I've already again stirred those wax extremely well. We're making sure that we have thorough distribution of the fancy additives. After thorough swishing, we're going to swish that just a little bit slowly now. We don't want to be having any potential aerating. We just want throughput of wax. And again, versus ultrasonic, the chain's not waterproof. Once the wax is through the chain with the friction modifier in it, you put a layer of wax into the chain, you can't put more of it in there. You are going to have a finite amount. As long as the wax is well distributed and has run through and coated the chain, you have done yourself a perfect immersive waxing. And we're going to remove that and hang to set. So now we'll move to the final, or run through the final steps, which is basically once the wax chain has fully set, we would put it back onto the machine. I won't need to demonstrate that again due to time and that it's now occupied, but it's basically we would clean the machine thoroughly after the second break-in. The wax chain goes back on, and then it's a 30-minute run to break the wax in. If we try to do a race powder application on a freshly waxed chain, the chain's locked solid with wax. There's just going to be not really any ability of the race powder to penetrate in there. So we do need to break the wax chain in. If you're not doing the race powder application, which is a bit of faff, and it is a marginal gain, so we're talking probably, it has been tested, it's somewhere in the vicinity of around sort of, I guess, half a watt at best, so a fraction of a watt gain for the race powder for a short-ish period of time. But here we're doing, I guess, the ultimate race chain prep. So that step is done as standard with the ZFC race chains. If you're not doing that step, then prior to a race, if you've just done all the awesome break-in and ultrasonic cleaning or container cleaning, and you have waxed your race chain with fresh wax, you're just going to break that in on your ergo, or just break in pre-race as part of your warm-up. In normal temperatures, and we're going to say anywhere really between around 15 degrees Celsius to anything really above that, basically around a 20 to 40 minute break-in time is going to have that chain in a brilliant optimal spot, ready to start your race. For the ZFC chains, we're obviously we're doing the machine break-in for the wax and then the race powdering. It is going to be in that optimal zone, ready to race as soon as you take it out of the box. Alrighty. Sorry, almost forgot. Whilst I was here, here talking about sort of race wax, training wax. So if you're racing and you're doing a dedicated race chain, the optimal really is to have a dedicated race wax pot. So for me, obviously because we're using fresh wax, that is then put aside into barbecue tray. And then when I change over, so I have relatively strict regime for the wax that is used for just the standard ultrasonic clean and wax prep that we do, which is the bulk of the chains going out. The race chain wax is, which is only seen a chain, goes across to be the next wax for bulk chain prep. And so mine cycles through like that. For those of you playing at home, you are fine to keep your race chain wax pot just really for your next retreatments or re-waxes. And so really by the time your training chain is nearing its recommended replacement mark, that is when you move your dedicated race chain over normally to be your next training chain, and you get a new chain to be re-prep and be your next dedicated race chain. So if you're retreating that with your race wax, then that is also normally going to be around about a good time to move your training wax on, replace that with the wax that is your race wax, which is going to stay pretty mint because you're going to be re-cleaning your chain before you are going to re-wax it in your race pot. So that wax can move across to be your next training wax. Fresh wax goes in to be your dedicated race wax pot. I hope that all made sense. All right, a lot of times race powdering, so the best place to, I guess, go for information on how to actually apply this normally is the Molten Speed Wax website. So they were, I guess, one of the few retailers that are still selling a race powder that you apply yourself to your race chain. And once you've got your race prep chain going and you have race powder, it's good to reapply it in between. So even before you're retreating the chain, reapply it again from one race to the next. So normally a race treatment in, say, dry road conditions, it's going to be super fast for around that 300 kilometre mark. So if you do a race that's 100 kilometres long, you don't have to retreat it straight away. You've still got another 1 to 2 races to go. Reapply race powder in between. As the wax wears thinner and thinner, you're still going to get, I guess, ever better penetration of the ultrafine powder down the sides of the rollers and in between the inner and outer link plates. And it just is a super, super slippery powder that's going to, I guess, increase that treatment lifespan a bit. It does make it faster, and it's also, you've got this ultrafine powder that's kind of taking up space that airborne dust would otherwise like to try to occupy. So it is cool if you can be bothered sort of doing that in between. Really important races, so I rarely do this these days because I'm not that competitive, but you can also, if you can be bothered, powder up your cassette and chainring or chainrings. It's going to be a very minimal gain that there's possibly not the technology to measure what that gain may be and for how long. But hey, if you're going nuts preparing your bike for battle for the race next day, then it can be a fun thing to do. So I still do occasionally for things like state championships or a national round that might be in Adelaide for cyclocross or mountain bike, especially out in the world of dirt and dust. Race powdering the cassette against such a super slippery powder, it is going to extend the time for which airborne dust is going to stick to that cassette due to static, because you've got your chain and your cassette and so on whizzing through the air. Dust often sticks to parts due to static or stuff whizzing through the air. It's why you get dust sticking to your frame and your wheel rims, and you haven't lubricated those. There's no oil making the dust stick to those, to your frame. It's static from it zooming through the air. So having super slippery powder between your roller and the cassette teeth is going to be better than dust from the trail. So yeah, it has some marginal gain advantages for a bit of faff. It is extremely staining, so do not get this on your clothes. Wear gloves, because if you get it on your fingers, it's a bugger to wash out. If you have excess powder on your chain, so let's say you have race powdered your chain and you are now traveling to a race, do not lay the bike down with the chain facing up, which I think is probably the most common. It is possible that the vibration of the travel is going to dislodge any extra or excess race powder, and that may vibrate down or dislodge down onto your disc brake, and super slippery powder is not a braking enhancement. So you want to keep this well away from your rim brake or disc brake surfaces. As you're powdering, it is an ultra fine powder. There's no PTFE, but it is molybdenum and tungsten disulfide. Not a lot of information onto, like, if you sort of are to breathe a bunch of this stuff in over time, if that's going to be bad for you or not. But I doubt our lungs were designed to breathe in this stuff over time. So wear a mask, a decent, this is a double filter mask, or you can wear a chemical mask. If you're race powdering, just pop one of these on. Once you have race powdered, you should really wipe the excess off anyway, because you don't want excess just sort of vibrating around and potentially getting onto stuff. So you will be, once you've done the job, it's extremely, I guess, low amount that is ever going to get near you. But whilst you're doing the powdering, mask up. The instructions by Mild Speed Wax, I believe, are still really focused on, you have the chain, your wax chain that you have done the break-in run. So if you haven't done this as part of your warm-up, do that on your ergo so you can break the wax in to race powder it. And they will generally have, so you would have, say, like a small paintbrush, you have a barbecue tray bent into a V shape, hold that underneath the bottom span of your chain, or it can be the top span on top of your chainstay. You're going to dip your brush in the race powder, brush that onto the chain. The barbecue tray underneath that you've bent into a nice V is going to catch excess powder, which by the time you've done the whole chain, top and bottom, you'll be able to pour that from the V shape back into your race powder container, or you can just leave it in the barbecue tray, put that somewhere safe and out of dust, ready for the next race powdering. What I tend to do is I use, again, a container method. I find that this does do a much more effective race powdering than brushing it on. And it also just keeps it a bit more contained, especially when I'm doing this all the time. And yeah, it's just a very, I think, a better method of applying the powder than brushing it on your drivetrain. And there's still, I think, on the bike, there's potentially more risk for that ultrafine dust to just get around and get onto surfaces like disc brakes and rim brakes and so on. Whereas here it's away from your bike. There's no risk of that. Alrighty, so mask on, gloves on. This is so not the chain we were preparing before. This is one that's at the last stage that is going to be zooming out very shortly this afternoon, that I've got to get out today. I just have a sealed container. So I'm going to pop that in. There's nothing too scientific here. It is basically just shaking the bejesus out of it in every direction. I'm going to flip the chain over and we're going to repeat. Ah. Okay. And now also, so we can see this is very heavily and thoroughly powdered. I'm going to get the excess off that now. This is a track chain. Now, check with your local velodrome, but for track chains, I do also recommend that you give them a thorough wipe with a microfiber cloth, either before or after you have installed. Just again, we want to get rid of all excess. We don't want super slippery race powder going off onto the velodrome track. Okay, so that is very thoroughly powdered, and again, repeat that in between races if can be bothered. I recommend to set up something like this that's going to be self-contained. It's not going to get anywhere. Wearing something like this, so you don't get, if you get on your clothes or carpet, it ain't coming out. It is very staining powder. So that is that, and then that is now ready. I just put, I usually just pop fresh gloves on again just for the final handling. Being a track chain, this one, I supply the link that comes with the chain as well as the universal link. So I'm not race powdering the links. There's plenty of powder in there anyway. Normal road chains, I will race powder the link that comes with the chain and include that in the packaging as well as a spare link. But for the track chains with those two, I just leave them as is and let all the lubrication on the chain handle the master link. All right, final part. Alrighty, so the chain's done. Final part now is just the packaging. My packaging for race chains has varied a bit over the years, but I now have something a bit fancier. It is nice to put race chains into a nice little box because they have had a lot of labor time to make them as fast as possible. And you know, humans are humans. If you just get a chain and like wrapped in some brown paper, it's just it doesn't give you the same sense of like, oh, I have an awesome chain, as opposed to if it's nicely packaged. So half the game's 90% mental, as they say. So these little race chain boxes that we have also give you the basic instructions on what to do with your lovely race chain after this race treatment has worn off. And obviously, if you're not sure, then simply email myself and we can help you with how to best look after your race chain once that original treatment that either myself has done, or if you have followed the instructions and done at home as to what to do to keep your race chain awesome for many races, because they should last you, it's an investment in a bunch of awesome low friction racing. For at least a limited time, I did manage to get some super custom suede cloths as well, which we can pop in there just to make it one final nice little touch on the awesome chain that we have lovingly prepared. And voila, ready to zoom out this afternoon. This one's going along with 3 other chains that they've got for training. So it's yeah, they're going to have a grand old time for a long time of low friction, both training and racing. That up for players at home. I do currently have an ultrasonic and race chain guide, but it is clunky as hell and terrible. I'm going to be doing just literally bullet point ones like this. So this is just a quick example to take home. Soon I will remove the other one and replace with yeah, just these bullet point ones, and I will update this to have other option levels. So if you don't want to go to the full 9 yards as we demonstrated today. So at home, do an initial break-in, do the ultrasonic clean recommend with UFO or Silka Stripper, degas for 10 minutes and clean for 10 minutes. You can do with solvents. It's just going to be yeah, longer runs and more rounds. Boiling water flush rinsing if you are doing the ultrasonic with DT or stripper, and then dry, and that saves you also needing to do an alcohol bath. Reinstall on the bike, use a decent drip lubricant or mineral oil and apply 1 drop per link. Then do the second break-in, which is our longer break-in, to really try to loosen up the chain and mate the surfaces and get it into a more optimal spot. I've given some time guidance there on chain models and brand. Ultrasonic cleaning around post that second break-in. Basically, we're following the what we did the first time around. Again, if you're using DT or Silka Stripper, as long as you've got a decent volume, you're only going to need to do 1 round, and it's going to take care of it in that 1 round. Solvents, you're probably going to be needing to do multiple rounds, and it just takes a lot more time and more steps, and you also need to do an alcohol bath rinse. Dry again after the final rinsing, be it with boiling water or alcohol, and then you're ready to wax with your either race pot wax or fresh wax. And again, if you're race powdering, then move it back to the ergo to break in prior to that, or if not, then just give it a break in of around 30 minutes prior to racing. And that is going to make you a very awesomely fast dedicated race chain. All right, so that little doc won't be up on the instructions tab at the time this goes up. I will try to get that done by very early next week, along with the other level options. And then I'm going to redo, I think, an ultrasonic guide like a pro and keep that separate. Because whenever I try to combine ultrasonic guide and race chain guide, I do end up in a clunky mess. So I do have to now dash. It's my lovely wife and I's 11th wedding anniversary tonight, so it's going to be lovely. And I better head out the door soon to meet her at the restaurant. So yeah, hope that all was a nice insight into how we make the fastest race chains here at Zero Friction Cycling, and kind of the whole thing about what race chains are and how they differ from just a normal prep. So a standard ultrasonic clean and wax prep, it's literally obviously out of the box, into the ultrasonics, through the solvent round, alcohol round, dry, and into the wax pot. It's skipping all that. I mean, there's literally at least around an hour physical labor time per race chain. Zero Friction Cycling obviously being very small, each chain is done individually. Other places are obviously set up for pretty high volume, and so they have machines where they've just got literally, there's just chain rings and cogs. There's just a whole row of them. They're doing, I'm not even sure how many chains at a time, just doing a break and run before they go into ultrasonic cleaning, and then I believe it's from there to the waxing and the wax break in. Some brands have powdering, some brands do not. So there's a fair bit of variance out there in the race chain world, but that's how it's done at ZFC from really knowledge that we've, I guess, accrued over a long period of time. Sort of working with and discussing with a number of the experts in the industry. And we've had a lot of practice at it, that is for sure. All right, have a great weekend, everybody. And yeah, I will look forward to your comments and input, and I'll catch you on the next one.